ago, McLaren and Max Verstappen asserted their dominance on the Formula One world. And now, the 75th year of Formula One begins with the Australian Grand Prix. And I'm excited. I hope you are too. I'm Joey.
Fuck.
This is Rob.
Sorry.
What you did?
It's fucking
Take it
drip.
easy.
Sorry.
He's so excited.
Hold
He could die.
I'm gonna fucking die. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
Like,
Lord.
I'm so excited. Leave it
So-
in. Fuck it.
We'll do it live. Formula One is back, and I'm glad that it's starting in Australia. That's kind of where I feel it belongs. I get money's involved, but let's stick with this for a minute. Let's enjoy this. How you feeling
Well, they
about
also
the
did
season?
to help them else too by moving
was
Bahrain
Ramadan.
and all that.
It's Ramadan. I get why. I'm totally okay with it.
I respect it.
I'd be okay with
Totally.
it if it was still in Bahrain and we went to Qatar after. Or no, Saudi Arabia is next. I'd be okay with that, but it doesn't matter. Race cars are on track. That's what we need.
That's the
That's what
important
makes
thing.
the world go round.
We're back at it.
Yes. So let's get right into it. As of recording, we are between qualifying and the race. Let's kind of review some things that have happened. A lot of new faces in new places, a couple new things, new rules, kind of taking away some rules. Also, the fact that this is pretty much a lame duck year for any kind of advancement with the car because of new regulations in 2026. So let's get down to it. FP1. Rob, you got some notes on that. Let's hit it.
Oh, too many. I mean, between the intro for F1 with George posing in that same stupid pose he did last year, I still can't respect the kid.
That's going to be his victory pose from now on, right?
Oh, 100%.
He's sticking with the.
It's already a meme. It's already out there. It's just ridiculous. But I'm excited about the 6 new rookies. Definitely.
Yeah, this is I think one of the biggest rookie classes we've had in a while.
Yeah, and I think only 2 constructors have kept the same lineup, and that was McLaren and Aston Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. You got Jack Doohan over at Alpine. You got Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes. Oliver Behrman has joined Haas. Gabriele Bortatello has joined Sauber or Kick Sauber, whatever they are. Isaac Hadjar.
Future Audi is what we'll call them.
Future Audi. Yeah. I would say that too. Also joining them is Matteo. I'm excited about that. COO and CTO.
Oh,
How do you feel about that?
I forgot he took over Kick Sauber. I mean, it'll be interesting to see for sure how Matteo Binotto takes over. And I know their team principal, Jonathan Wheatley, spent a lot of time at Red Bull. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how, Matteo saw success at Ferrari for a little bit.
Yeah.
So to see that and then the success that Red Bull has had and just kind of see those minds mesh together, how that can only help the team will be good. They are powered by Ferrari engines, so kind of some familiarity there going into the year. Kimi Antonelli being the number 2 as of right now at Mercedes. I'm surprised they didn't want to go a route where it's, hey, we'll just kind of put you in a car just to get you familiar with Formula One and then move you up to a spot in Mercedes. You had Carlos Sainz was available.
Yep.
But, if you saw Drive to Survive, Toto Wolff said that he didn't want to miss out on another Max Verstappen. And they feel like he's another Max Verstappen. So it'll be interesting to see. I think when we get to qualifying, it wasn't his fault of why he didn't make it to the next round. We'll talk about that when we get there, obviously. But he's got a lot of talent. He's a really good driver. It'll be interesting. I'm excited to see him. Isaac Hadjar to me was kind of the surprise signing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would have thought. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like seeing talent come up, and especially seeing the number one and number two in the previous year's Formula Two championship, that tells you the health of what's coming up through the ranks in F2, F3, and all of that. Um, Ollie Behrman, you saw some of his flashes of brilliance last year, struggling a little bit out the gate with Haas.
A little bit.
He's I don't think he's ever driven an F1 car at Australia. Not
No.
saying anyone else has, but there are some people like I think Liam Lawson's never driven a Formula One car in Australia. I don't think he's even driven a Formula Two car in Australia. So, you know, it's going to be, how can these guys kind of, get the experience in such short time to make it through the race? I think honestly, if you're a Liam Lawson, if you're a Jack Doohan, if you're a Isaac Hadjar, just run your race,
Hmm.
just get to the finish line. Because if you want to score points, you have to finish. And honestly, with the fact that it's only the top 10 get points, it makes it that little bit harder, but you will have some attrition happen throughout the season. There's going to be crashes. These guys are driving it out all out on the limit. Turn 6 is catching these guys out a lot with the
Yeah.
gravel trap. So
Yeah.
you're going to have you're going to have gravel spewing all out on the track, and it's going to get on those tires, and it's going to affect the grip and the handling. Um, Turn 10, they're going wide out of that little left right complex, and you
100%.
see those cars just jumping on the curbs. So I love this track. I'm glad they made the changes they did to that, where that long straightaway is, kind of that sweeping left, sweeping right after 6.
Hmm.
Uh, it used to be another chicane. I'm glad they got rid of that. It's
I am
made it's
too.
made the racing better.
Chicanes are important in racing, but I feel like this one, it's the fourth fastest track in the calendar, and I feel like it needs to have that speed. You put that chicane in, you're dropping what, like 5 seconds almost sometimes.
It would
So
it would still produce some good moments, but it was just something where you didn't have it. It wasn't another passing zone.
right,
So this way, you kind of promote a little bit more passing. You have a little bit more of a fight going into that 9-10 complex, um, which I play the Formula One game all the time, and that's probably my favorite complex to drive through in the game.
hmm,
Uh, it's I'm just like I'm excited. I'm ready for the race. Like get me to lights out right now. Like
oh
get
yeah,
me there.
absolutely. And I mean, with other things going on, you got the weather coming in tomorrow. Like they had, hot sunny F FP1, FP2, FP3 and quali were a little bit cooler. So that made some changes for them, and they had to adjust. A lot of them are trying to decide: do we run quali for the race, or do we run quali and just make our adjustments another time? So it's big planning. I mean, these guys are some of the smartest people, not just the racers, but the engineers, some of the smartest people on the planet. And I can't always fathom half of the stuff that they are thinking and projecting.
Well, the biggest thing is, uh, some of these teams, and I think some of the teams going into qualifying even set the cars up for the rain. Um, I would say Haas probably set it up for the rain just to be safe, uh, which means higher downforce. So when it's dry, you're getting past. Uh, Slower speeds at the end of the straight. You'll get better speed out of the corner or into the corner, but when it's raining, you don't need low downforce. You need as much that you need everything you can to plant the four tires to the ground,
Yep.
and because you're gonna hydroplane, you're gonna run through a puddle that's just there, and the car's gonna catch you off guard. So
Do you feel that that's what screwed up Berman's not only practice but quality? His quality was,
so I think part of
like,
what happened with Ollie Behrman was when the broadcasters were asking the Haas drivers, have they run a quali sim at low weight and all of that?
well, if
They
you want.
both said no. They said no. Um, Ayo Komatsu is the kind of guy that wants them to know, like, this is what you're going to have in the race. And that way, when it comes to race day, they're ready. They can make moves. They can make passes. They know what the car is going to handle like. Um, it's gonna make quali suffer, but I think I kind of agree with them that if you're good at qualifying, think of Nico Hulkenberg last year. He would qualify top 10. I think he made it to Q3 like 11 times. But how many times did he finish top 10? Because as
Right.
soon as the race started, he fell to the back like a ton of bricks.
Hmm.
So if you get the guys used to racing and being in traffic and having the dirty air, then and having that much weight to know this is how my car should handle, then when you get to race day and you're fighting for 15th, 14th place, trying to get to the top 10, you have that little bit of an advantage. So I get where he's coming from with not letting them drive all out on low fuel. Counterpoint to
Still,
that is
still need some practice though.
Ollie Behrman, this is it's not his first race. It's his first race at this track, which is by no means easy, but you know,
And
you're
in the
dealing with,
Haas.
you're dealing with, the regular elements that you deal with on a street. It's not a purpose built racetrack. They started building this out a month ago, and there were people still driving on the streets up until 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So all the oils, all the, whatever fluids fall from a vehicle are on that racetrack. And when it rains, that's just going to seep up. So all the oil that people drop on the roads is going to seep up out of the ground, and it's going to make that track as slick as possible.
Yeah. It'll be
But
pretty
you can't
interesting to see.
you can't really prepare them for that, because where you have preseason testing is a purpose built track. They've been doing it in Bahrain the last couple of years, so you don't have you just got to hope that you don't lose the car too much, that you could save it, get it straight, you know re-get your senses, and then get to it.
So you talked about turn 10 a little while ago, and that's where Behrman wrecked his car. He spun out, lost control. What do you think led to that?
um I mean, honestly, you watch those cars go in, and they're hitting bumps, and it upsets the car. The cars are low enough to the ground already. When they bottom out, that means there is nothing getting the contact patch of the tire. Then almost it's like that's all you got, and then you add the carbon fiber of the under or the that wood plank, then it just starts to slide. So I think he lost the back end, went to catch it. When he caught it, he was in the gravel. Then when you bring it back, the tires are dirty, and it just spun.
Hmm.
These cars are not easy to drive. Yes, he's had a a few races to get used to it, but I mean, they're driving these things on the edge. You can't expect them to be, you know, on top of their game all the time. They're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, and I mean he's young. He's 19. He's going to be 20 this year. So I mean he's first full time in the F1 car. I mean he's had some practice. Um, you know what was it? I forgot what team he ran for a little bit, but he's young. He's going to grow. And I agree with Martin. He was like, just run your race. And I feel like that all six of them need to do that. I know there's high stakes for Kimmy and Liam just because of the teams that they're on, but you just got to run your race, not focus on everything that's, all that high pressure of the team you're on. Because in the end, if you don't finish the race, there's zero chance of you getting points. And I feel like
Well,
that's where Berman's in his head a little bit too much. Because I mean, he wrecked in FP1, missed all of two, beached it in the beginning of three. So he's struggling out there, and I think he's in his head a little bit too much, and he needs his physio or a team leader. He needs someone to be like, all right, take a breath, clear your mind, get settled, because if this is any indication of what he's going to see in the wet, he's not going to make it past turn one. So,
well, I think the thing that he's going to have going for him is that he's going to have patience on his side. Haas is extremely patient. They, they will give him time because I think honestly, he may be the next Ferrari driver when honestly Lewis hangs it up. I think
It's
Lewis is going to
possible.
hang it up first. The thing that he doesn't have going for him is that there's other drivers in the wings ready to take his spot.
Hmm.
I don't know if you heard like the media's asking about Jack Doohan, like, hey, you know, they signed Franco Colapinto as a reserve driver. You worried about losing your seat? It's like, dude, like I just like we haven't even run a race yet, and you're asking me
Yeah.
these questions. So you've got those guys waiting in the wings, Colapinto, and I think he said they have like four reserve drivers like ready to go. So it's give them the first three races to get used to Formula One, and then like go after him. However, uh, I mean, Kimi Antonelli, he's going to have a lot of time. Um, you know, George Russell's the number one driver there, and Toto Wolff is putting all his eggs in the Kimi Antonelli basket.
Oh,
He
100%.
thinks he thinks he's the next coming of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen didn't start with like he won at Red Bull when he first got there. He was there for I think a year and a half, and then it's like, okay, here you go, you're going in this seat now, and it took him 5 or 6 years to win a championship. So it's not going to happen overnight,
No.
especially
You,
with
you have to
especially
build
with the
them up.
drivers they have. Yes,
Yeah. I mean, they're young. They're used to the F2 cars. The F1s are clearly more advanced. So they have to get used to that. What, they have like a day and a half of uh, practice in Bahrain, and then they go straight into the season. So
yeah.
it's
You
not
get
enough
you get
time
a
to
day
get
and a
used to the
half.
car.
You get a day and a half to get used to your current weapon, and that's it. And
Yeah.
then it's all right. You're going to throw into the wolves. Um,
And you don't even know how that car rides because you can't touch it until you get to practice. So,
yes, you could get, and they have rules where they can take an old car and put them in that, and for the most part, that at least gets them the seat time to know, hey, the car turns this way. Like
mhm.
this is how the steering feels and all that. But other than that, it's good luck.
Yeah.
The
Speaking of
good
which,
thing is the good
what
thing is before you say your next thing, if anybody has a problem this year, there is an 11th team joining the grid next year with Cadillac.
it's true.
So that's if your dress rehearsal or if your tryout this year doesn't pan out, maybe Cadillac will look at you and say, "Hey, maybe you need a different set. Maybe you need a different place." Although, from what I've heard with them, uh,
They're looking
it's
for an American
between
rider.
they're definitely looking for an American driver. I've heard um, Colton Herta, though he doesn't have enough license points for a super license.
Mhm.
Though I think he may have enough after this IndyCar season. I don't know yet. Um, Pato Award, his name's come up, but he's got to deal with McLaren, so I don't know if he'd be able to get out of that deal to get to Cadillac. Valtteri Bottas is a name that's been thrown out. Sergio Perez has been thrown out just to have that veteran leadership to get them started. Um,
Which would make sense.
I would honestly go for the veterans this year. Get a Valtteri if he wants to do it. Get Sergio if he wants to do it. I know they both want to be back in the seat.
Hmm.
Daniel Ricciardo could be another one if he wants to do it. An American brand. He loves coming to America, like going to Austin,
Yep.
um, being in LA. So he's a guy they could look at to potentially be like, hey, you've been in championship winning teams. Are we in a good spot?
Right.
Um, but honestly, hopefully, when Cadillac joins the grid, they'll be competitive. I want to see them succeed. I'm not going to get into the why the Andretti thing failed, but Cadillac did. Even though Mario Andretti is involved, Michael Andretti got not involved. The new guy,
It's a
it's
mess.
all it's a mess. Um,
A lot of bruised egos too.
yes, but back to this year's grid. Back to the 10 teams that are in the grid now, or in Formula One this year. Who would you say after watching practice and qualifying is your surprise?
Oh,
And it
in
could be surprise good or surprise bad.
I don't know if necessarily person, but surprise in practice and quality together. Williams, the car was looking really good. Carlos was doing really well. He was in the top 5 for a little bit. Um, and then, if we jump straight into quality at the very end, Albon, he got up into 5th. Yuki snuck in, no one was watching him, and then took that spot. So, Racing Bulls, Yuki's looking good, Albon's looking good. Of course, Sainz is looking good. Um, I'm liking seeing McLaren as well, seeing them on the top still. Uh, I'm trying to think if there was anyone that really stood out to me. I don't feel I feel like the Ferraris have the experience to get up there. I don't know if the car's there yet, and that's just my personal opinion. There's something about the car that was just throwing me off.
So I think the one thing about Ferrari is, you know, Leclerc's there. He's been there. He
Mhm.
knows the ins and outs of Ferrari. Lewis said something very interesting one day that when he's looking at the data traces are upside down to him. So Mercedes, and then even Carlos has said the same thing about Williams, that everything is flipped to him. So what, like, is that just kind of growing pains for the first couple races? Is that, you know, give it time and it'll show, or is it this is going to be a long term problem? Um, my honest surprise for the weekend, like you said, was Williams. I
Yeah.
I knew that they were going to improve. Carlos has said that he likes what James Vowles has said about the future of the team and where the team is going. I didn't think it was going to be this fast. I would have thought they would have been competing for a top 10 in practice and qualifying. Didn't think it was going to be top fives.
Well, I
So
mean, last year you had some glimmers of hope. I think you just didn't have the right drivers.
you
But
had you had they were finishing top 10, and I thought when when they came off of last year, it's like, okay, we competed for top 10s. Next year to start, I think if we're competing for top 10s, we're where we need to be, so that when we make the upgrades, if they want to focus on this year's upgrades as opposed to the car next year, because that's a thing now. If you remember back to, was it 20, I think it was 22 or 21. It was 22 when this car, like, these regulations were brought up. In 21, teams were focused on next year's car. Haas focused on next year's car. They said, we're going to it's a lame duck year. We're not going to worry about it. And so when they went into that first year with the new car, it was, okay, the finishes are starting to show up. We're getting there. When the, you know, what teams are going to say that this year? Well, they haven't said, like, no teams have said what they're doing. I think Zach Brown said that they're trying to find that balance of how much do we want to improve on this car based on we want to win the constructors, we want to win a drivers championship, compared to, you know, I think Red Bull's probably sitting there looking and going, we need to focus on next year. I feel like we have the car to beat this year, because you have to say that, especially if you're a Red Bull or McLaren. You know, everyone's chasing. I feel like everyone's kind of still hunting Red Bull, but they're starting to turn their focus on McLaren because now they know what McLaren can bring.
right.
So, that's going to be a storyline that we're going to see in this season, is when that when that turn of going from the hunter to the hunted for McLaren is going to be, when Williams is going to start turning it on and maybe trying to become part of that top 5 like they used to be back in the early 90s.
Mhm.
um,
My
do you think that they'll compete for podiums at some point this year, or do you think it'll be top 5s to top 10s, or where they're going to finish?
my suspicions for Williams is they're going to find that kind of balance. Let's be honest, everyone's been working on the new specs since probably last year, at least working on the engine. Um, I think if Williams is smart, they focus on being best of the rest. Maybe, there'll probably be some podiums here and there. And obviously, you always want to win, but I think their focus is get as high up in the constructors as they can for this year so that they have more prize money to really invest in the winter to get that next car ready to go or give a little extra into the research that they need to do. But
Well,
I feel
all the teams starting, I think, starting next year are going to get a little more money because Cadillac has to pay like an
a shit ton.
anti-dilution. They have to
Yeah.
pay some kind of thing to not dilute them. That doesn't dilute the prize winnings as much.
Right.
For the 10 teams that, for the most part, have gone through the struggle, gone through, everything, went through COVID and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard an interview with um, Claire Williams, who was her dad was Frank Williams, the founder of the team, and she
Right.
kind of ran it for a little bit, had some success, and then went into COVID, and it, like Drive to Survive era, that's where the team tanked. They noticed overspending, got into COVID. They had a sponsor that backed out. I think it was. I think I know what sponsor it was now, because they had one design for the car, and then all of a sudden when they came back, it's like that's not the same car you showed
Mm-hmm.
everybody at the launch. So, uh, they lost out on a bunch of money from that. So they started in a deficit. Had to sell the team during the pandemic. When they sold it to the people they wanted to sell it to keep the Williams name out there, that's when Drive to Survive got popular because everyone was stuck at home, and then the money came rolling in, and the prize money just skyrocketed. And
Yeah.
Claire Williams goes, "I'm kicking myself because if we had just stuck it out for one more year, we'd still have the team." Um, but I think, bringing up that prize money, but you know they've got a title sponsor. They have an engine deal with Mercedes, so things are looking up for them,
Yeah.
and it can only move up. They still do everything in house. They don't customize. They're not a customer to any part. They engineer everything in house, so they're spending a lot more money on the car. The whatever money they get for the drivers is whatever they get, but I think that has nothing to do with the cost cap, um, which I think is stupid. I think it needs to be involved in the cost cap, but I'm 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 hopeful. I'm cheering for Williams to be successful and bring the Williams name back to the top, because that's one of the last privateer uh, teams in the league, in the series.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
excited to see what they do. I'm hopeful. I mean, um, I feel that they could really shine this year, especially with what we've seen so far. I'm excited to see how they do in the wet tomorrow or tonight. So it'll be pretty interesting. But I think we need a segue now into quali. We've been
all right.
talking about before. Let's get into what happened last night. Um, so they had to rebuild Ollie's uh, car during FP2. He beached it in FP3. I don't know if he got any runs at the end of FP3, but whatever
Well,
happened in between that
I
time.
think if he beached it and the car, once you get out the car, you cannot drive again.
Well, no, in quali you can, or I'm sorry, in free practice you can.
But they have to get the car back to him, and I think where he stopped the car, they couldn't get it back to him until,
Oh, I thought there was a road that they could get
because he was on the
to the
outside
pit.
of the track, and I don't think they could get to the inside of the track until the track wasn't hot.
Gotcha. Um, but either way, I mean, he's first out for quali one, and he can't shift into fourth gear, and they had to bring him in. So he didn't even get a quali. I
Yeah,
don't even think he did a full
spinning
hot
the
lap.
car, spinning the car backwards, and that's one thing that, like, I think in all forms of motorsports, when you spin the car and you see those rear wheels spinning backwards, that's never a good sign. That's
Yeah.
typically means you're gonna mess up a transmission, um, any kind of housing in the rear that controls the rear wheels. You could spin the engine backwards, which could mess up timing and ruin your weekend. I think if I remember, I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but they've already had to change power units.
Yeah, they did a full gearbox change for him.
So they have to do it again essentially or rebuild it if they can. He's starting last anyway, so might as well just change it all out, and then you're starting the back anyway. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, his teammate didn't do much better either. So is
but I
it
think I think they had that.
necessarily
I think they had it set up for the wet. I'll be
that
interested
would
to see
make
how they do tonight.
it would make sense? I mean, Ocon's not really my favorite driver, but seeing him that all the way in the back, even in the Haas, was kind of surprising to me. So, because I know he's got an aggressive style, kind of like Max. So, I would have thought he would have been, more midfield, or at least in that, with that top second half. So, that was surprising to me. And then also in quali, Kimmy's car, I think they found out later on he broke the bib somehow. I'm assuming maybe on that turn 10 curb.
I think it was broken before
You
because
think?
he was sparking pretty bad going into nine. Um, he might have hit a curb. It might have been that turn six curb,
I was gonna say,
and
isn't
it
there
just
a
shook
turn
it
6 curb?
loose. And because when he was going down the third DRS zone, you could see sparks just shooting out the back. It's like
Yeah,
you have DRS open, you shouldn't have sparks coming out like that, especially as light as the car is. So I thought it was just like a suspension thing, like they set the car up way too low. But then as you look at it, you see
it's
where the
it's on the
sparks were
ground.
coming from. It's like, okay, that's broken.
Yeah,
So he's gonna do fine. He'll be fine.
yeah.
Um, it'll be again. It's gonna rain. It'll be interesting to see. He missed out by 9 thousandths of a second
Hmm.
to Bortoletto, who made it to FP2. That was the only. That's as far as he went was FP2.
Yeah.
But the shot that was the shock of that session for sure.
Well,
Going
speaking
into
of Bortoletto,
FP2,
I mean, he's got a chip on his shoulder after Marco's comments.
I think
You
he
think
has to look
Marco's
at.
trying to push him, or you think he's really believes that kind of crap?
I think he really believes that because he
Yeah.
believes that they have the best four drivers on the grid. Um, I think he's starting to get kind of tired of Yuki not performing as well as he should.
Hmm.
Um, I think he was hoping Yuki would be, competing for top fives and first places and all that. But in all honesty, I think that he's gonna say Helmut Marko is gonna say those things. He's gonna you know word vomit to the press about this is how I feel about that driver. This is how I feel about this driver. So now it's up to these drivers to go out and prove them wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, if I was Bortoletto, I'd look at it and say, well, I beat your choice for the Red Bull seat.
100%. I was just thinking that
So
myself. I mean,
go ahead
Liam
and say
was
I'm a B driver. I beat Liam.
Liam's got the same car as Max and was just couldn't get it together. So
I feel like Red Bull's going to have some trouble. They don't have Adrian Newey anymore to design those
yeah,
cars. And I think it's the first time in a while that they haven't had uh, Adrian Newey.
well, that's interesting you bring them up because I was looking when they had the little queue. I looked at the Red Bull and I was like, "There's no sidewall vents or pod vents, or if there is one, it's very subtle and it's the only one. I didn't see any
How about the
vents."
side pods?
Yeah,
I thought they had them.
I could be
They also
wrong.
didn't show. They didn't show the Red Bull that often. I found.
No, they just showed
Um,
Max in the queue for like 10 seconds at most.
and I wasn't really paying attention to the car.
Yeah,
Because it looks the same. It looks almost the same as last year to the naked eye. There's like some small differences.
yeah, there
I know
always is.
there's a regulation coming. I want to say in the fourth weekend that they can't have the flexible front wing anymore. So
Right.
like when you watch from behind the front wing, you see that thing just kind of start to go down. You can't do that anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so I know Red Bull utilizes it. I think McLaren utilizes it. So we'll see if any of these teams that don't necessarily utilize it that well, if they're going to improve because of it, if that gap will get tighter. Um, I'm hoping it gets a little tighter because it'd be great to have everyone within like a second and a half, or from a
Yeah,
second and a half to maybe a second. But they've said this is the tightest the grid has been in a while.
yeah. I mean, I think by the end of quali, everyone except for one car, yeah, they were all within a second of each other, all 10 cars. So the only one that did slightly better, I think, McLaren, both cars, they from Q1 to Q3 had improved within nearly a second from the finishing times. So that was pretty
Which that's
impressive
just
to see.
that's just wild.
Yeah.
Like when like we'll skip Q2. The one thing I will say about Q2, Isaac
Lewis
Hadjar,
spinning.
Isaac Hadjar was closer than it looked to being in the top 10
Mm-hmm.
and making it. So Racing Bulls has
They got a
pretty
car.
good. They've got a car.
I
They're
almost
going to
wonder if
be.
they RB19.
I thought for a while that's what I think that teams used to do was when they had like a feeder team, they'll go, okay, you're getting last year's car.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
Do
getting
what you
last
want
year's
with
car.
it.
Do what you
Yeah.
can. But now that you have to develop every part yourself, you can't copycat anything. You can't, you have to build everything from scratch every year to year. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, you
Right.
remember when Aston Martin was Racing Point, I think it was the year before they became Aston Martin, they were like, "Oh, look, it's the pink Mercedes."
Mm-hmm.
Because it looked exactly like a Mercedes from the year before.
Yeah.
Um,
No, 100%. The other thing in Q2 was Lewis spinning out at towards the end. That kind of screwed some people too, which I think it did screw Isaac actually. Talking about that
I think he,
because
I
it
think
caused the yellow flag and he had to let off.
he was either approaching that or he had just missed it.
I think
Um,
he approached it because he had to slow down because they
because I
showed
had
Lewis.
I had qualifying on. I had the international feed on the TV, and I had the map and the segments on my laptop,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of keeping up. And what's crazy is when you look at the data tracker, it shows like the time, like the different segments of the sectors.
Yeah.
I think Lando Norris was purple in one of like the 8 mini sectors, and he was purple in that sector.
Where Lewis
So
spun out.
no, just like in general, like for a
Oh, okay.
random, like he was purple in sector one. But when I looked at the data tracker that shows the mini segments of the mini sectors, he was of the 8, he was purple in one of them.
Oh, okay.
So just to show how fast he was going in that sector, that made him faster than anybody else.
I mean, watching his and Oscar's hot laps, I was just like, how is this thing just so flat out on all these turns? Like, they're pushing it, and it
They've got
just
it
looks
figured out.
good. The car looks great. I'm excited about it.
They've got it figured out. You know, from Miami, like from those upgrades in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
that car has been the one to beat every single week. And I think it's going to get closer as they develop, unless there's a development that just completely turns the car the wrong way.
Right.
Um, it's going to be a tight field this year, for sure.
I,
Um,
I I like it when it's like that. I mean, I can't tell you. I'm gonna be honest. There were so many races where Max ahead, and it was like either an early morning race or something. I'd go back to sleep, and then I'd wake up like with 10 laps left, and I'd be like, "Yep, he's still in the lead." And I just watched the highlights because it was like you don't want to watch those kind of races. Like you're bored. Like you're almost just looking for someone to hit the wall just to cause a red flag so they can line up again. And you don't want anybody to get hurt or do that, but it's like some of the races last year were pretty boring. You got to admit.
I mean, that's when the days of Michael Schumacher,
Mm-hmm.
it felt like every week that dude would win the race. He'd get in the
Yeah.
lead and he'd be okay. Bye, see ya. Um, Even Mercedes, it'd be okay. Lewis is in first. either Valtteri or Nico Rosberg were in second. Okay, what's going on in fifth? Um, you're going to have that with Formula One. It just seems for some reason when the teams figure it out and they stick with it and they stay in the front. But this year's I feel is going to be different. I feel like
Wait,
this year it's going to be the most exciting Formula One season ever.
I do agree. It's not necessarily, last year Max or, Lando's fault for, blowing away. It's the other teams. It's like, okay, your upgrades did not work. Bring something different or go back to what was working. It's like met, stop going with the status quo. And I know every track is different. I know every like from street to circuit and then, just the weather conditions, things like that. Everything plays a factor in it. But you got some of the smartest people in the world working for racing and you can't figure it out. You got like rocket scientists doing aero engineering on these cars and you can't figure out how to find just 1/10 of a second. It
Well,
doesn't make sense.
I feel like with the ground effect cars, which is what these are,
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes has struggled. Um,
Oh yeah.
Ferrari kind of figured it out at the beginning and then just couldn't keep up with the upgrades. Red Bull having Adrian Newey on as their lead designer, he could figure out, where to put the air to maximize everything out of that car. The RB19 is easily the best car Formula One has ever seen.
Yeah. Today.
So, from that standpoint, you're going to see Red Bull start to kind of fall back if they already haven't. And McLaren may step up. You may even see Aston Martin start to step up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this gap is going to get closer. Williams is starting to figure it out. It's going to get to a point where, you know, you might see when they get to the summer break, anybody can win the title. There's not going to be a clear cut favorite. I will say that my favorite to win the title this year is not Max, but it's pretty obvious who my pick is based on how the last couple years have gone.
Yeah.
Or the last couple months, I should say.
No, I think it'll be a good season. It'll be a great season no matter what. But I think I like seeing that Max is still fighting for it. Like he doesn't know how he doesn't like losing, but I think Piastri has a few podiums in his future, like first positions, maybe even some poles. So I think it's going to take. I think he's more comfortable now, and he's got that experience with racing with Lando. And of course, papaya rules are still in effect, but they can still race. It's just don't hurt each other, don't screw the team. So we'll see what happens. Someone's going to mess up a strategy. Maybe Oscar will take advantage of it. I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kimi can do at Mercedes. You know me, I've never been the biggest Mercedes fan, but I kind of want to see him outshine George. But we all know why on that one.
You're just not a fan of George.
No.
I, in my opinion, Oscar's going to win races.
Yeah.
Lando's going to win races. I can look at the top 10 right now in qualifying and say that
I think Yuki might win one.
3,
That's a bold
4,
statement, but I might see it.
5, 6. 6 of the top 10 will win a race this year.
Yeah.
I can see, Lando's going to win, Oscar's going to win, Max will win one, George will take one, and then both Ferrari drivers will take one. So
I'm a little worried for Hamilton. I'm not going to lie. And this isn't a dig to the LH fans, but something about him is different. Like last season, I saw it too.
He's wearing red.
Well, that's the actual difference. But maybe with Ferrari, like maybe they'll put in a little effort and help him get to that last championship because they sure as shit need one.
I think he'll win his 8th championship with Ferrari. I think he's got a
this
3-year
year?
deal. I wouldn't say this year.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I think he'll compete for one this year. You know, think of it like this: where did McLaren start the season last year?
It's true.
They were pretty much last. They turned that
Yeah.
around and won the constructors championship. Ferrari's going to compete for it. Fred Vasseur has it figured out, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is Lewis and Fred's relationship. It's I wouldn't say it's exactly like Toto and Lewis, but I feel like Fred's more of that like, hey, you need help, I can help you. Like, let's talk about it. Let's sit
Right.
down. He can get the job done, but he's kind of relaxed where he's like, look, if it doesn't happen, you're still alive. You still got all this stuff. So he could put things in perspective to be like, okay, you know what? He's right. Let me not worry about this. Let me get a fresh start coming into the next race and could win the race.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that with Fred, I feel like, you know, he doesn't take it too seriously. Like like McLaren will win a race. He comes up, he's spraying them with champagne.
Yeah. He jumps
He's
in the
trying to
picture with
he
them.
jumps in the picture with them. He's
Yeah.
having fun with it. And, it's a pleasant sight to see that. Like, yes, it's Ferrari. It's serious. It's the Tifosi. But, he kind of grounds everybody like, look, let's like the race is over. The job, it is what it is. Let's
Yeah.
let's enjoy
Leave it on the
ourselves.
track.
Leave it on the track. We're not like Ferrari and McLaren were the rivals in the championship towards the like in the last two races.
Hmm.
Who was the first who was one of the first people that went up to congratulate Zach Brown on the constructors? Fred.
Fred.
He went, hey, good race. See you next year.
Hmm.
Was he upset? Probably, but they did what they could with what they had. So that's why I'm kind of pulling for Hamilton to win the eighth championship. Plus, now that, you know, in all my years of watching racing, which isn't very much, I've never seen an eighth title. You
Right.
know, Michael Schumacher won 7. And I'm going to go across. I'm not going to count drag racing because I think John Force is like a 14-time champion.
Yeah.
You have Dale Earnhardt was 7, Richard Petty was 7, Jimmy Johnson was 7. I feel like 7's like that number where it's like, all right, everyone stopped.
Hmm.
I want to see somebody win an 8. I want to see somebody get that, make that history and be like, look at me,
And he would
8-time
do it with
champion.
3 constructors, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think he would be.
Because he was with McLaren with the first one, right?
Yeah, he won. He won with McLaren in 08,
And then Mercedes
and
and
then Mercedes for 6 years, and then it would be Ferrari. I want to say he'd be the first one to win
I think so.
a drivers' championship. Let's see. I'm trying to think of who it could be. Maybe Alain Prost. No, because I don't think he won one with Ferrari. Because he won with McLaren and he won with Williams. Schumacher won with Benetton and Ferrari. Kimi just won with Ferrari. He won one. Fernando won with Renault. He didn't win again. So yeah, he might be, unless there's
He
like
might-
somebody like Sterling Moss or, um, any of those drivers from the early days. Maybe Nicky Lauda. No, Nicky Lauda
no.
was just with Ferrari. He
Yeah.
won with he won with Ferrari, and then I think he won with McLaren.
That's your homework for the next
That's my
episode.
homework.
That's your
I
homework.
can pull that up now. Hell.
Well, while
I
you're
mean-
doing that, let's go over the lineup. You want to start from the back of the grid to the front?
All right, so you're starting as I go to something else.
Well, you can look
Starting
that
grid.
up.
I got it right here. The starting grid for the Louis Vuitton Australian Grand Prix.
Jesus.
I
I still can't get over it.
It's the first time I've seen them be the title sponsor for a race. Good
I don't
for
think
them,
I
though.
saw a single Rolex sign.
That's
during
because
qualifying.
Rolex is no longer the official sponsor of Formula One.
Ah, that would do
Tag
it.
Heuer took that over.
Interesting.
Starting in 20th, you have Ollie Behrman. in the Haas, and then Esteban Ocon 19th, sharing row 10. Row 9, Liam Lawson in the Red Bull Racing Honda Red Bull Powertrain, if you go by the entire name.
That's way too fucking long.
Well, Haas is Haas Ferrari because it shows team name and engine manufacturer.
Right.
Um, and then Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber Ferrari. Kimi Antonelli in 16th with Mercedes, and then Gabriele Bortoleto with Kick Sauber Ferrari. Jack Doohan, son of former Formula One driver Mick Doohan, with Alpine in 14th, and then Lance Stroll with Aston Martin Aramco Mercedes.
Is it weird that I'm hopeful that like all those rookies, you got what, 5 of the rookies back there, or all of them behind Stroll?
One. They don't count Liam Lawson as a rookie.
They
2,
should. Yeah.
3, 4, 5.
Isaac's going ahead of him. How funny would it be if at least 3 of those 5 stay ahead of him at the end of by the end of the race? It's just proving
it could happen.
He should not be in there.
I think.
And I think Aston Martin would be more successful if he does not get renewed next year.
I think there's a possibility we could see Yuki Tsunoda in an Aston Martin.
That's bold. Where's that coming
from? Because next year, Honda is moving to Aston Martin.
Oh.
So, but I will say, Honda did say, because that's how Yuki's in Racing Bulls, that he's on his own to figure out, they carried him to this point, and maybe Lance Stroll decides I don't want to race anymore, or maybe Fernando Alonso's like, all right, I want to hang it up now.
I don't think he enjoys it. I don't think he likes, well, obviously no one likes losing, and especially as badly as he's doing. But at some point, you have to take responsibility for how terrible you are.
Who's that?
Lance Stroll.
I think the fact that nobody brought up the fact that he binned it on the warm-up the warm-up lap at the Brazilian Grand Prix last year should tell you everything you need to know.
Yep.
He enjoys doing it. They don't want him to answer questions about how he's messed up. That's
because I don't think he has a free thought in his brain either. Like if you ever see him try to interview, he looks like he's struggling for words.
Yeah, but can't say anything. He's an F1 driver, and we're not.
It's true.
So,
and I never
doesn't matter how he got it. He got it.
Yeah.
Where was I at? Fernando Alonso 12th in Aston Martin. Yeah. And then, like you said, the rookie Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls in 11th. 10th place, one of the surprises of the year so far with testing, and now Carlos Sainz in the Williams. I can't. You asked me what their sponsor was, and I forgot to look that up.
Adolescent or something.
I don't get this right. I don't want to mess it up because
people are going to learn very quickly. I'm horrible with pronunciation.
Atlassian Williams Racing.
Yeah. Don't know who they are.
We will find out before the end of the season. He's in 10th. Then you have Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Pleasant surprise from Alpine being in the top 10. Next.
Not surprising it's Gasly, though.
Yeah. I think Jack Doohan will figure it out. I think another thing that's going to be, he wants to prove the media wrong with all this talk of, Franco Colapinto is right behind you. Then you have an all-Ferrari 4th row with Lewis Hamilton in 8th and Charles Leclerc in 7th. Look out for them this weekend. I think they're gonna compete for a podium.
All right.
Alex Albon in 6th. One of the surprises with Williams being 6th. Had 5th for a while, but nobody saw Yuki Tsunoda in Racing Bulls take over 5th.
The very end.
But when I say nobody did. They were already talking about Lando winning the pole.
Yeah.
4th place, you got George Russell in the Mercedes, and defending drivers champion Max Verstappen in 3rd in his Red Bull Racing Honda, and locking out the front row for McLaren Mercedes, Oscar Piastri in 2nd, and Lando Norris in 1st.
Yeah, with a difference of 9/100ths of a second.
So I lead this question to you as we kind of wrap up the
Yeah.
preview for the Australian Grand Prix. Who's your podium?
Ooh. Um, it's tough because like we said earlier, the top 10 is all within a second of each other. I have a feeling it's going to be a McLaren 1-2. The third place is where I'm struggling, is because Russell was looking good, and that hurts my soul to admit. But I feel like Max he's gonna find a way to potentially, and this is where I'm struggling with the 1-2. Is Max always finds a way to pass Oscar somehow. His aggressiveness or Oscar's slight hesitation. So it may be a McLaren, Red Bull, McLaren podium. And I
Okay.
might go with that one.
So you're going to say, what's the driver?
Norris, Verstappen, Piastri.
Okay.
What do you got?
I will differ from you a little bit.
Okay.
So, in the history of the Australian Grand Prix, being a Formula One race, there has never been an Australian to win.
You're
this
looking
race.
for it.
I think this is the best shot that they've had in a while to get a winner. The problem is, Lando Norris is probably the preferred driver. Don't let Mark Webber hear that. It's going to be Lando in first, Oscar Piastri second, and I'm going to put...
You're going to go rogue, aren't you?
I'm going to go rogue.
What Ferrari are you throwing in there?
I'm going to put Charles Leclerc to finish third, with Hamilton finishing fourth.
Ooh.
That's my guess.
Okay. You heard it here first.
So,
see how wrong you are.
I'd call that a preview episode. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah.
But
well, I'm excited. It's going to be a great 2025 season. We got, 10 straight months, I think, of races, 24 races. We didn't even talk about how there's no fastest lap anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that.
They hilariously gave that to NASCAR. NASCAR now gives out an extra point for the fastest lap.
You mean the never mind. I'm not even going to talk about going in circles all day.
I mean, technically, when you think about it, all forms of road racing, NASCAR racing, Formula One, they go in circles.
Yeah, but at least with the fun of Formula One, you take a rubber tube and you just throw it on the ground, and there's your race.
I mean,
like that's your outline. Unless you're Monza, and then it's
it's just this. They took this and they just went boop.
And Las Vegas, they took a pig and put it upside down. But we could talk about all these tracks.
We'll talk about that when we get to that point of the season.
100%. So, I'm excited.
For Rob,
I like Albert Park.
Yes, I love Albert Park. Albert Park is a fun racetrack to watch.
It's one of my favorite road races.
Mine too. But it'll be a fun season.
Hell yeah.
For Rob, this is Joey. We are signing off on the Ready Steady Geaux Formula One podcast. We will see y'all Tuesday with a recap of the race.
Go McLaren.
Go McLaren. Have a great night. Enjoy the race.
Peace.